Welcome to another edition of Storytime. I'm your host, Steve Hatherly, and I thank you kindly for joining us once again. I don't know about you, but when I think about the world of hypnotism, I'm kind of confined to what I've seen in the movies. You think of that dangling watch going back and forth, and the hypnotist saying, or the doctor saying to the patient, "You are getting very sleepy." But I guess I'm ashamed to say that that's all I think about. And I guess the reason that's all I think about is because that's all I've really been exposed to. That's the limit of my education on the topic. Well, my guest today, he hails from Boston, Massachusetts, originally in the United States, though he now calls Korea home. He's been doing hypnosis for over 20 years. The time started when he was back in high school. It all began with a stage show. He saw that and he was immediately hooked. In the aftermath, he bought a book. He followed the instructions to a T of the information that was on the pages within that book. Initially, he used what he learned as a party trick, but that quickly grew to doing his own stage shows, just like the one he saw originally, the one that he saw that drew him to the field initially. And that was soon followed by hypnotherapy. Today, for story time, we dive deep into the world of hypnosis. My guest is Mr. Gabriel Dye. Hello, sir, and I thank you very much for joining.
Well, thank you for having me.
This is going to be interesting on so many different levels because, like I just said, I don't know anything about the topic. And I think that's probably true for the general public. Would you agree with that? I mean, people just don't know anything about it, right?
Absolutely. And it kind of blows my mind that they don't, but I can get into that in a little while. But yeah, for the most part, people have very little concept of what it is. If it even exists, most people, one of the questions I get is like, is it even a real thing?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Does it work?
Yeah.
A lot of people apologize before they ask. I'm like, no. If you're not skeptical,
yeah,
then I think you're not thinking correctly. Like, I think your worldview is a little too open if you're not skeptical of the claims you've heard or whatever you come across about hypnosis. So today, ask me anything you want. Like, if something I say is suspect or doesn't sound right or the explanation is unclear, let me know. Like,
okay. Fair enough. Well,
everything's open.
Let's start back at the beginning then. Let's start with that show that you saw when you were in high school, I think.
Yep.
You said, what was that show, and what was it about the show that drew you to the field so magnetically?
Right. So I saw a show for our high school grad night. So one of the activities that we did to celebrate graduation was we had a hypnotist come to the school, which is a common thing in the U.S. I don't know about other places, but in the U.S., like, you have hypnotists coming to like pretty much every high school in every state. So that was my first exposure. I saw the show and I was just floored. Like, I couldn't believe that something like this could possibly be real, because what I saw, the thing that really struck me, was that the people that I knew, I knew everyone. I knew that they weren't paid, or I knew that the hypnotist didn't bring them in a tour van. Some of them were acting so counter to their personalities that I'd come to know, over the years. It just blew my mind. Some of the things that they were doing, right? Some of them seemed to be doing involuntarily. Just really, really hit me for whatever reason. Like, I was the only person in the audience on the edge of their seat going, I'm going to look into this because it's either the biggest load of bull I've ever seen, or the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's got to be one of those.
This was kind of a typical show, I guess, where there's a hypnotist on stage, and then they ask for volunteers from the audience, and then maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 people will go up on stage, and then, but you didn't offer to go up on stage?
No, it was a long time ago. I don't know exactly what I was thinking. I think I'm a pretty different person than I was then, but I don't even think I was interested in participating. I just wanted to see what was up.
Okay.
Like, because I came at it with the information that most people have, right? Not much.
Mhm.
I had heard the words. I had this idea that it was something that controls some, hypnosis is some force that controls people, or a hypnotist has some power to control people. So I wanted to see that. I didn't want participation to, block my view.
So we'll get into exactly what it is. I have a lot of questions
Sure.
about what I mean, I even want to know about the science about what happens inside a person's
Sure.
brain. I want to know if everyone is susceptible to it, or maybe susceptible is
Right.
not the right word, but if there's some sort of thing in your personality that allows you to be hypnotized where other people don't have that. But we'll get to that a little bit later. What was the book?
Sure.
So you saw the show, you were immediately hooked.
Okay.
And then you bought
Yep.
bought a book. Now, if I go to a bookstore right now after this interview, I don't even know what section I would go to find a book on hypnosis. So what book did you buy, and what was it all about? Was it like hypnosis for dummies or something?
There is a hypnosis for dummies.
Oh, is there really?
There is a the whole dummy series.
Yeah,
there's an Idiot's Guides, the Idiot's Guide series, the dummy series. I think they're different. They have a hypnosis one, they have a hypnotherapy one. So the book I got was called Hypnosis. I think it was like Theory, Practice, and Application. It had a cover of a hand swinging a watch.
And, that image, right?
The word hypnosis, right? I mean, so typical. And I saw the words theory, practice, and application. I was like, well, that's what I want. So it turns out it looked like it was a newer book, but it was written, I think, in like the 50s by this guy Rhodes. And I read it. I mean, it was my first exposure to any information about it. I couldn't tell you what was in it, except that I followed the scripts. Oh, okay. So here's what a hypnotist does, or here's what a learning hypnotist does. Because once you get away from the formulas, you kind of can freestyle a bit. But when you're learning, here's what it looks like. You have scripts, right? You have techniques and methods. And one of the first things you learn is suggestibility test. And the suggestibility test is something you do with your subject or hypnotee or whatever, the person you're working with, to kind of gauge how well they're going to do in the process. So a suggestibility test, one of the ones in almost every book, and there are a lot of books on hypnosis, right? This is not like a thing that's hidden. If you look for it, you will be overwhelmed with information. Okay, so here's an example of a suggestibility test. And I don't know if I learned this from that first book or just from, doing it for so long. You would have your subject, you'd say this, okay, hold out your hands like this, put this far apart, close your eyes, and now imagine that there are magnets on each of your palms.
Do you want to do this right now? I can do this with you. Will this work on camera, or do you?
Oh yeah, it totally works on camera. But I'm going to say let's hold any demo for later, just because it can drag on a little bit.
Okay.
Because you say, okay, so I would say imagine there are magnets on your palms. Find the feeling of those hands being pulled closer and closer together.
Okay.
Right. Imagine that like you're a kid playing with magnets, and you can feel that attraction closer and closer. And you do this. The hypnotist says these things for anywhere between 30 seconds and 3 minutes if you're patient enough. And that kind of gives you a gauge on how well your subject is going to follow instructions, how well they're going to turn these images and imaginings into some sort of physical response. So I read the book, and the book said, say these words. And I was like, okay. So I sat my younger brother down and
hey, come here. Why? Never mind. Shut up. Just sit down.
Yeah. I put a chair in the middle of the living room, and I think we tried it. I think we tried it once before I got this book. I think I found a script online. This is in the early days of the internet. Or it might have been from the Anarchist Cookbook. I think they might have had a section or something like that. I don't know if that rings a bell. But and it didn't work. But then I got this book, read through, suggestibility tests and some inductions, which are, like I said, just the lines to say, right? Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and relax. And I said these.
Yeah, inductions are what does that word mean? Is that where you're the stages of like you're going deeper and deeper before you have control over somebody?
essentially. I mean, that's the idea.
Okay.
Okay. But the tricky, okay, so we'll stick with that. That is the idea. And that is a good way to think of them. But as a little, I think we'll get to this, but it's not necessarily true. Like, that's a good way to describe it, but it's not exactly what's going on.
Okay.
So I know that sounds a little vague, but I'll just go through the basic process right now. So you do some suggestibility tests, then you do an induction, which is basically a different suggestibility test. And an induction is going to be something like, I'm going to count from 10 down to 1. Every number I count, you're going to sink deeper and deeper. You're going to feel like you're being pulled down.
Okay.
Physically relaxed, mentally relaxed. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Right, getting them more and more relaxed, more and more. That's what a basic induction or relaxation induction is. There are others, but that's the most fundamental, the most basic one. And then you would move on to some sort of test or routine if you're doing a show. So you would do some suggestibility tests. You would do an induction, and then you would see if it works. In a moment, you're going to open your eyes and feel very, very warm. Or in a moment, you're going to try to open your eyes and find that you cannot. It's like they're stuck down. Imagine that your eyelids are glued shut. Just imagine that feeling, find that feeling. In a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 3, or I'm going to clap my hands, or I'm going to snap my fingers. You're going to try to open your eyes and find you cannot. So when you say that, that's the moment of truth, because you don't know if it's going to work or not. Right? You've been through this, right? Because the suggestibility tests give you an idea. Like, if you say, imagine there are magnets on your hands, close your eyes, find that feeling, and they go like this, like, okay, that's good. That's a good sign. If they take a couple of minutes, maybe not so great. It's just giving you a sense. It's not necessarily, I mean, this person might be terrible. The person who takes 3 minutes might actually be really good at other suggestions. So I know I keep repeating myself, but just to make it clear, suggestibility tests, the induction or a couple of inductions, and then the moment of truth, which is you give them some sort of suggestion to act on, and you see if they respond. Because again, up until that point, you don't know. So in the case of my brother, my younger brother, I did whatever the book said, suggestibility tests, induction, and the moment of truth was I tried 2 different things. I said, cool. In a moment, you're going to open your eyes, or you're going to wake up and be, back to normal, except you're not going to be able to say your own name. Right? I forget what the wording I used then was, but now I give a bunch of metaphors, a bunch of ideas and images, like it's been shot into space, like it's been erased off of a blackboard, like it's a feather on the tip of your tongue and you just can't quite get it out. Just load them with a bunch of stuff just to see what sticks. And on this attempt with my younger brother, he opened his eyes, looked around, and I was like, okay, again, moment of truth. Do me a favor, try to say your name. And he couldn't. What? And then I went with, and that's a common, super common routine. And then I went with the other one I did was what would you call it? Like an arm lock. Essentially, you straighten your arm, imagine that it's a bar of steel, imagine your joints are glued, you're locked shut, and you can't bend your arm, even with your eyes open. Even, responding to everything around you, for whatever reason, that arm will not bend. And that also passed with flying colors. And that was my first successful attempt. And I was like, are you serious? This is a thing. This is a real thing. Like, I saw it on stage. Well, maybe I could justify that they were just playing along, even though, once you see it in person, it's kind of hard to see that everyone would actually be responding the same way. But yeah, sitting down, doing it, just blew my mind.
What's the history of it? Because I find that interesting as well. I don't know how far back it goes. Does this go back to the medieval days? Was it used for some sort of mental therapy? Was it used to was it maybe even heal people of like sicknesses or viruses that they might have? Do you know where this actually came from? Where in the world it might have started, and when and why?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, yes, there's a history. Okay. so the starting point for hypnosis, as we think about it, where a person says something to someone else and they respond, right? Like, and let me say something about response. So if I say to someone, you can't bend your arm, and then they go, oh my God, wow, I can't bend it. They could be playing along. And that's not necessarily hypnosis. What makes it hypnosis is that it's a feeling of involuntariness. It's a feeling of it's happening on its own. So like you are fighting with yourself and losing, right? So to sit down with someone, say some words, and to have them give them that experience really started with this guy, Franz Anton Mesmer. That's where the word mesmerism comes from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he was born in the 1730s, studied a bunch of stuff. I think he was a doctor for a while. And he kind of was the forefather, is that the word, of modern hypnosis. And a brief history of that is he thought you could use magnets to heal people. He didn't come up with that. So other people were doing it too. He thought that by passing magnets over someone's body, he could release blockages in their body that were caused by some universal magnetic fluid. And it was the blockages of the fluid in their body that was causing whatever the diseases were. So he would pass magnets over. People would have these crises where they would have something similar to seizures, and then be cured. So essentially he was curing psychosomatic illnesses with magnets. Eventually he realized he didn't need the magnets. So he thought that he was powerful enough to move this fluid. And then eventually over time, people, stripped away the layers and realized, oh, you can just say the words, right? You can just make the gestures, and that's enough to influence how people are thinking and experiencing things. Now, before that, most hypnosis books will tell you that there's evidence of hypnosis sessions in like religious rituals and medicine men and stuff like that, but it's not quite the same, right? To say that someone is chanting and putting people into a trance because they're banging on the drum and dancing around for hours is a little bit different than saying humans figured out you could sit down with someone, tell them something, and have them respond as if that were real. So that version of hypnosis, I don't know if any of this makes sense, but that version of hypnosis started with Mesmer. So yeah, so it's not very long. The history is not very long. You would think that humans, with all the communication, would have figured out, oh, if I tell this person to forget some information, some people automatically forget it. But it just apparently wasn't a thing.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because it's such an intangible thing, right? I mean, you can figure out whether an apple is poisonous or not by eating it and then seeing immediately what happens. It's kind of like a cause and effect type thing. Right. But with hypnosis, I mean, I don't even know where people would begin to even think about the concept of suggestibility, or the concept of being able to tell somebody something and then actually having the power over them, or even, well, I guess that's one of the things. It's not that you have power over the person, correct me if I'm wrong. It's that the suggestion has taken control of their brain.
Yeah. So as much as hypnotists tend to get into it because they feel like they have power over people, I mean, what's really happening is the hypnotist and the hypnotee, the subject, are participating, right? It's an act of collaboration of the imagination, as the hypnotist Anthony Jacquin likes to say. So you're even with someone who's really suggestible, you still need some participation on their end, right? So you're not going to sneak up behind someone and whisper suggestion and have them respond to it. I mean, okay, that being said, if you have someone who's very suggestible, maybe, but it's not really power, it's collaboration.
Why do you do it? Why do a lot of people do it? You just said that some hypnotists get into it because they like that concept or that idea of being able to have power over somebody. I was thinking about this in the car as I was driving home about what questions I wanted to ask you about this. And I went over that in my mind. Why would somebody want to be a hypnotist? And we haven't gotten to hypnotherapy versus general
Hmm.
hypnosis yet.
Yep.
But my thought was, I'm guessing it's because a lot of people want to help other people,
Right.
in a sense. You said, yeah, sure, there's the party trick aspect of it, and doing a stage show and making people laugh and have fun and things like that. But there's a whole other level where you could really make a change in someone's life. In your
Yep.
experience, why do people want to do this in the first place, and why for you personally, other than the fact that originally you thought it was really cool?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I get into anything I'm into. Okay. Yeah. So there's a distinction between hypnotherapists, stage hypnotists. Um, Actually, those are the big two. There are some other fringe groups, but yeah. So the main ones are hypnotherapy and stage hypnotists. And stage hypnotists, I mean, I'm generalizing, but I've done a lot of that. We are drawn to the fact that, oh, I can make someone forget their name.
Hmm.
And even though I say, I'm not making anyone do it, it's collaboration. I mean, I'm setting the scene.
Sure.
I'm saying the words. I'm finding the people who are who are good responders.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I am creating this situation, and that's awesome. Like, let me give you a rundown of some of the things you can do with someone who is sufficiently hypnotizable
Okay.
or suggestible. Name amnesia, which I've been over.
Okay.
Amnesia. Okay, so these are some common routines. Number amnesia. So you say, in a moment, you won't be able to say the number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Just that's not even a concept in your mind. And then you ask them things like, what's 1 + 1? And everyone laughs at their confusion and the situation. And it is amazing. I've done it for 20 years. And every time it happens, I'm like, look at that. Isn't that great?
Right.
Isn't that great?
How entertaining for me.
Yeah. I mean, I am usually the most entertained one.
Mm.
Things like catalepsy, which would be inability to move. And you can
Okay.
play with that in different ways. So again, you can have someone, have their arm locked, hand sticks. As we say, your hand is stuck to your head. Can't get it off.
Mm-hmm.
And now keep in mind, when people are responding to these suggestions, they are wide awake. Or having conversations going, this doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
I know I can, but I can't. We'll try with your other hand. Oh, no, that's stuck too. And it's I always feel weird talking about it, because who in their right mind would believe what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like, but okay, but I'm just again, to go back to the routine list. Catalepsy, where you can't move. An offshoot of that would be things are too heavy to pick up. So one of the things I like to do in my stage shows is a mic stand is too heavy.
Okay.
And you get, whoever the most jacked member of your
Mm.
of your subjects is, to go over and try to move the mic stand. Things like, if you're in a bar, can't pick up the beer, or can't put it down. It's floating you around the room, which is a common one. Then you get into hallucinations.
Hmm.
And with suggestions, again, with someone who's sufficiently hypnotizable or suggestible, you can say you're going to open your eyes and see an elephant. You open your eyes and see, a cartoon character on your shoulder. You can do auditory hallucinations. You're going to hear music, or kind of similar to auditory hallucinations. During this person's speech, for example, like if, the boss is giving a speech and you're doing a show for them or a talk for them, as part of the bit, you can say you're going to hear jokes in your boss's speech that other people can't hear, and they're going to just make you crack up.
Okay.
So that's hallucinations. That's a hallucination as well, auditory hallucination. You can also do negative hallucinations. So you can't see what is there.
Mm.
So a common stage routine would be the invisible hypnotist. When I clap the hypnotist would say, when I clap my hands, I'm going to become completely invisible. You can't see me, you can't feel me, but you can hear my voice.
Hmm.
And then what you tend to do is you pick up objects and float them around your subjects and watch them freak out.
And watch them freak out because they're floating, right?
Yeah. And then I guess one of the last ones, one of the easiest ones, is emotional control, or toying with
You can make people laugh or
sensation,
cry or
feeling, can make them laugh, like hysterical laughter within half a second. You can make that, you make them very sad. I mean, you tend not to do that on stage just because it's, you know, impolite to your subjects. I know all the things I say, like as I'm saying, I'm like, wow, I'm really picking on people here, but you know, you do it with respect,
of course,
and with their blessing,
and in the context of the show, then it makes sense.
Exactly.
Of course, yeah. So I asked just a handful of people as I was preparing to speak with you, and I just wanted to know. I asked them, "Hey, do you think that you'd be able to be hypnotized? Have you ever been hypnotized?" And they said, "No, I don't. I don't think I would. I don't think so. I don't think that would work on me." Every single person I asked said the same thing. Yeah, no, I don't think that would work on me. And they didn't say it, but the sense that I got was that they were saying to me, I'm too smart for that. So do you get that a lot where people think, oh, well, are these people weak? Are they weak-minded? Are they stupid? Is there that kind of negative connotation that comes along with susceptibility? I'm using that word again, but
no, I mean that's the right word.
That's the right word.
That's one of the right words.
Yeah. Is there a negative connotation there, or is there any connection at all to being weak-minded and also being highly susceptible to hypnosis?
Good question. So we'll start off with, yes, there's this really negative connotation idea that people have, which makes sense, because if the only thing you know about hypnosis is that it can control, 1 second, my screen just went dark, is that hypnosis can control you, well, then the last thing you want to believe is that you're someone who can be controlled.
Right.
So it makes sense that no one is going to well, some people do say, I think I'd be a good subject. I'm like, imagine if there are two magnets on your palms. Let's see where this goes. But yeah, of course, you know, the general idea of hypnosis is one that's going to prevent people from, you know, hoping that they're good subjects. But whether you think you're a good subject or not has nothing to do with whether you are or not.
Interesting.
I mean, most people that I hypnotize will either tell me, yeah, I don't think I can be, but I'll try it anyway. Or after a successful session, they go, wow, I never thought it would work. I mean, that is just, those are the two most common reactions.
So if you have that preconceived notion in your mind that this isn't going to work, then that's not necessarily going to stop it from working, is what you're saying.
Okay, so as the hypnotist, in a situation like that, if someone says, I don't think it's going to work, it's my job to get them to at least give it an honest go. Right. So when I did my shows here in Seoul, I was working with relatively small groups. So like 35, 40, which is dangerous as a stage hypnotist. 30, 40 people is dangerous. Here's why. So suggestibility or hypnotizability across a population looks like something like this. You have 5 to 15% of the population is going to be very good, just straight away, very hypnotizable. Why? I don't know. And people have been researching forever and trying to find out the answer. Then you got the other end, 5 to 15%, who are going to have a very hard time experiencing the phenomena that I mentioned, right? The hand sticks and emotional. Now they can still benefit from hypnotherapy, which I can get into in a little bit, which is hypnosis with other stuff added.
Okay.
But and then you've got this middle group that's varying degrees of average. So they may be able to experience that emotional control, or maybe like, you know, their eyes stuck, but they might not be able to negatively hallucinate, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So if you're doing a stage show and you know 5 to 15% are going to end up on stage, you know, saving your show to the end, saving your butt, you better hope that you have more than 30 people Otherwise,
I understand.
you know what I mean?
I thought you were,
Because
when you said dangerous, I thought you were suggesting like, oh, if they all turn on me for
oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah.
some reason.
I forget.
No, I
The way I think
understand.
about this is a little bit different than
Right.
others. Yeah.
So you were just
Yeah.
doing the math, right? So if you have
Just doing the math.
a smaller group of people, that means there's a smaller percentage of people that are going to be easily susceptible to your suggestions.
Safe 10%.
Yeah.
If you're a hypnotist standing on stage, you're thinking about a safe 10%. And if you've only got 30 people, well, what if that 10% didn't want to come tonight?
Huh.
Right? What if you only have three?
Yeah.
It's a little bit tricky to keep displaying the same people, because it does seem like you're picking on people at a certain point, as much respect as you give them. If you're constantly doing your routines. So you want to have like 100 people.
Yeah.
Like that is now you're in real safe territory.
And now that you've explained that, whenever I think of the images, I remember in middle school we had a hypnotist come to our school as well. But whenever I think of that, that show image, like the Las Vegas hypnotist show image, it's always with a theater of a couple of hundred people or more in there. And from the hypnotist point of view, that's a perfectly sized audience, because math wise, you've got a higher percentage chance of things working out. That said, it must be kind of nerve wracking when you go to do a show, because if I do a podcast episode, I know what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a great conversation with Gabriel Dye. If I do a radio show, I know what I'm going to get, and I know what I'm going to be able to give. More importantly, I know what I'm going to be able to give the audience. But from a hypnotist point of view, every time you go to do a show, it's out of your control. It's out of your hands, and you don't even know how it's going to go until you get to the suggestibility tests, the magnets, drawing your hands together. And you're for those not watching the video right now, Gabriel just
right. Okay, so audio too. Yeah, cross my fingers.
Cross your fingers. That's got to be extremely nerve wracking.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. So there are things you can do to help, right? So I mean, I do know a hypnotist who's had 3 shows where no one got hypnotized. He had audiences of 50 or 60. And this is, I don't know about other hypnotists, but this is my greatest fear. And I had, he was sitting across from me and explaining, exactly how it went. And it was exactly how I thought it would go. He apologized to the audience, gave them their money back, and he somehow had the courage to do it again. But there are ways that you can maximize participation, maximize kind of heighten, I guess, suggestibility in smaller audiences. If you've got 100 people, though, you're really not going to be sweating, because you do the tests to tell you if they're responding, and you don't really start the show until you're like, okay, everyone is there, right? You're not like jumping into it. So that's why you're not really starting the show until like the 25, 30 minute mark. But like, you're gonna cut that out of your YouTube videos, right? Right? Because you show the whole process. People sit through the whole process, and sometimes it can drag on a little bit. But you just reassure them we're gonna get to the good stuff. But you make sure they're ready. That being said, every time, let's say you have 8 people. I like to work with 8. It's just a manageable number. Let's say you tell someone, okay, to the person's shoulder I'm touching right now, unless you've been smart enough to remember their names, to the person's shoulder I'm touching right now, in a moment you're going to open your eyes and find you cannot say your own name. Well, a minute later, when you go, okay, everyone open their eyes, wide awake, hi there, what was your name? You're no matter how good they've been up to that point, you still don't know. Like so there is a little, there's a lot of always tension. I've never had a show, and I've never seen a show, and I've watched a ton of them on YouTube, like beginning to end. I've never seen a show where something didn't go wrong. And you just go
with the flow.
Oh, well. Yeah, that's why usually, if you're going to give a suggestion like, amnesia or an arm lock, I like to do a couple of people. One of the shows I did here for one of the women's groups, one of the I don't know if it was SIWA or Armed Forces Spouse Group. I'm sure you're familiar with those. Yeah, the number amnesia didn't work, but luckily I had said to the person whose shoulder I'm touching now and put my hands on two shoulders. Didn't work on one of them. I jumped to the other, worked brilliantly, and the show went on. So
I guess
you figure out how to save yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, gosh, it's so stressful because if it doesn't go your way, and I didn't even know this before you explained all of this, but if it doesn't go your way, then people in the audience will go, "Oh, you're a fraud. This is fake. I knew this wasn't real." Is that it?
Right.
That's kind of, but you can't really explain to them everything that you're explaining to me right now because that's not part of a show, right? So that's going to be a challenging part of putting on a stage show as well, I would think.
So I do explain because I do less of a show and more of a demo.
Okay.
Because I actually never wanted to do a show. The reason I didn't do it until fairly recently is because I didn't really like stage hypnosis shows. There's a lot of dancing. There's a lot of music. There are a lot of things that you could do with the drum, a group of people who are, a little bit drunk. In a moment, the music is going to turn on and you're going to dance around like a ballet dancer. In a moment, you're going to hear the theme from Rocky and you're going to get up and you're going to start, posing like a bodybuilder. Like these are not things these are super common routines, and no offense to anyone, but they don't really show the hypnosis, at least the thing that I think of as hypnosis, which is that feeling of involuntariness, that compulsion to respond, that inability to you're fighting with yourself and losing in the case of like the hand stick. Like to me, that says something is going on. So if I have, like in the case of the number amnesia that didn't work, I've actually already primed the audience and told them what you're seeing is not a magic trick. This is not something that's completely cut and dry. Sometimes things don't work because we are complicated. And I'm following a simple process. So if it doesn't work, I've already kind of worked it in there.
And that said, that would add to the credibility of it because you've already painted that picture. Yeah.
So you said it might detract, but in this way, it actually adds to it.
Yeah. Because it's not you're not pulling a rabbit out of a hat.
Right.
Yeah.
So, which is, there are a lot of hypnotists too, who have some mentalism tricks to fall back on. Excuse me. Like mind reading tricks where there are surefire methods where you've already gotten the information and it's just there in your back pocket in case your hypnosis doesn't work out.
Okay.
So there are people who do a blend because of this fear. I don't. If hypnosis weren't real, I probably would learn some magic just because it is, so awe-inspiring. But hypnosis is real, so I'll just do the thing that actually works.
For the people that are susceptible, right? You can get people to do an arm lock. You can get people to temporarily forget the number 2. Can you get people to do things that they wouldn't do normally in their day-to-day lives, meaning something outside of their moral compass? Could you suggest to someone, okay, you won't be able to straighten your arm, and they go, yeah, okay, I can't. I don't know why, but I can't. Could you make that person walk down the street, walk into a bank, and try to rob a teller? Or is there something, and what I'm asking, I guess, is there something that happens in a person's brain that allows them to do certain things that were suggested to them, but that will not allow them to do certain things that are not inside their moral compass?
So is there a hidden observer? All right, so there's this idea of a hidden observer that's that's going to protect you. There are a lot of people who think there is. There are people who say that the hidden observer is also just a suggestion. So, okay, I don't know. A lot of people say, yes, you could get someone to, assassinate someone. A lot of people say you could not. I come at hypnosis with a very skeptical attitude. There are a lot of claims that just sound like nonsense to me. Now that I also just explained that you could make someone forget something and hallucinate on command, but there, there are certain things that I just can't progress to. So like, again, getting someone to rob a bank, I don't think so. Like most suggestions that you do in a therapy session situation or a stage hypnosis situation are pretty neutral, right? They're not really pushing anyone's morality. They're not really pushing anyone's ethical boundaries.
But you've had to be curious, though, I would think.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah. So I mean, but you got to be careful, right? Because as curious as you are, you don't want to really put yourself in a situation and see if it'll work.
That's your own moral compass, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, like, sure, I'm curious, but I mean,
hey, little bro, also, come back. I've got another suggestion for you.
I also wonder, there are other things I wonder. I'm curious about, but I'm not going to go and experiment. But like, I wonder if I could give an example. So, like the bank thing, I don't think so. I think it's too complicated. I think there's just too much. But let's say, okay,
let me give another example.
Give me an example. Yeah.
Okay. I think you wouldn't be able to find a person on planet Earth who wouldn't think that sticking their tongue in a dirty ashtray is disgusting. Everybody would agree with that, and nobody would do that. Right? There's no way you could convince somebody to do that. But with the power of suggestibility, could you make someone do that?
That just popped into your head?
Yeah.
No. Interesting. Okay. That's a good question. So I think maybe, but it probably, and this is just a thought experiment, right? I haven't done this, and who knows? I mean, maybe it wouldn't work, but if it would, you wouldn't give a direct suggestion. What you would do is you would change reframe the situation.
Okay.
Right. Like instead of
like this is a bowl of candy or something.
Yeah, you are going to stick your tongue into that ash right now. Probably not the best approach. If it had any chance of working, it would be you're super thirsty, and in a second you're going to reach into you're going to realize that you have the most delicious, refreshing drink in front of you, and you're going to take a sip, and it's going to tingle your tongue, and it's going to smell fantastic, maybe a little nutty, right? And you're just going to drink it down. So you would,
you're adding layers now to the fragrance.
But that's what it would be, right? Because that might answer some of those questions that would pop up, like, the hell is that?
Yeah.
Oh, nutty, right? Because if you're working with someone of sufficient suggestibility, you'd want to maybe cover your bases, get a little creative. So if it were going to work, that's the route you would go. I mean, okay, a moral compass question, could you get someone to take off all their clothes and try to an audience?
Right.
This is a surprisingly common question that people will just ask me sometimes. I say, I don't know. I have not done this. If you were going to, it wouldn't just be a direct suggestion, right? It would, again, it's incredibly hot. You're alone. You're about to take a shower.
You're at the beach, right? Yeah.
So you would be, but that probably wouldn't. People are choosing to respond to the suggestions, right? So really quick. So like if I do a hand stick, again, common example, because it's very clear, it's stuck or not. I'm inviting them and requesting their participation. Imagine, okay, go ahead and put your hand on your head, and then they do that, right? Okay, now imagine that it's locking and sticking. Really feel that. Really, really find that feeling of perhaps glue now hardening, or find the feeling of your hand and your head becoming one, right? So I'm not saying it. I could say it's stuck, but I think that has less of a chance of really taking hold than if I invite them to get into the process, and participate with me.
I want to get to hypnotherapy in just a moment,
sure.
But do you want to do, can we do kind of like a practical application of this? Do you want to do a little test on me? You said it'll work through the camera, and we can see how susceptible I am or I am not.
Sure. Oh yeah. Well, let me ask you a question though first. Do you have any fears or phobias?
Spiders.
Are spiders? Okay.
Yeah. Massive.
So like if you were
massive fear of spiders.
Okay, so just to see, if we could do something with that. If you close your eyes right now for me.
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
And
just before we
yeah,
start
yeah, sure.
this, is this
Yeah.
something that people who are listening to, does this need to be visual for anybody,
Nope.
or you're just
Nope.
listening? Okay. So if you're watching this
Yeah.
video, you can follow along. If you're listening to the audio, you can follow along with Gabriel.
So actually, so this is just for you right now,
Oh,
just to
this is
see, just to
specifically
get
me.
a
Okay.
gauge
Okay.
of where this spider response
I
is.
understand.
So
I apologize for interrupting. Okay. My eyes are closed,
no
and
problem.
all right, I'm ready to go.
Okay. And I understand that it might be kind of hard because, you do have your game face on. You are doing a podcast right now.
Sure.
But just for a moment, if you were to think about a situation where you come across a spider, and it's a situation that you don't like, where your fear or your anxiety is maybe through the roof.
Okay.
All right, take a second. So where would that anxiety be, or that fear be, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being totally fine, 10 being horrible? And take as much time as you need, if you need a few seconds to really get into it.
Do you want me to tell you where I am in my mind, like what visually where I am?
Nope. You can keep that there. Just that number, like where do you think you are on that scale?
The scariest number possible.
Scariest number possible. 10.
10.
Full on 10.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there anything that could actually make that worse that you could imagine?
If it were
yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Go ahead and open your eyes. So that was just to get a gauge. So let's do a demo in a little bit.
Okay.
And we'll try a couple of things. And one of them, just for fun, is we'll see if we can reduce that anxiety when it comes to spiders. So we'll if it doesn't work,
we'll come back to that later.
Out. So I look good. Yeah. Just
Right. Okay. All right. So we'll come back to that a little bit.
Bad, because we'll have a little discussion about the therapy stuff.
Okay. So let's talk about hypnotherapy now then. So
sure.
You said there's kind of like two different fields. You've got some fringe other hypnosis as well, but generally the two mains are stage performances and then hypnotherapy. So what exactly is hypnotherapy? When I think of therapy, I think of emotional therapy, going to a therapist, sitting down, talking about your feelings, and trying to resolve some personal issues. When I think about hypnotherapy, by the way, I don't know, so I'm totally guessing. I'm thinking of things like quitting smoking, quitting drinking, maybe eliminating as much sugar as you can from your diet. Maybe like the taste of sugar is suddenly disgusting to you, or something along those lines. Am I on the right path there, or am I completely off?
Totally on the right path. So, so hypnotherapy is going to be using hypnosis techniques and other stuff to help someone with some sort of issue, right? So, like you said, it could be an addiction or craving, a fear. Pain control is actually a common application, which is the most amazing thing to me.
Pain control. You mean physical pain control?
I mean physical pain control. I mean patients. I mean people with chronic pain. So when I say that hypnotherapy is hypnosis plus other stuff, it's because when you do like stage hypnosis, you're going for that almost like I control you, right? Like the things I say, you're going to do. Yes, you may be a willing participant, but at some point you're going to go, oh my God, I cannot stop this, whatever's happening, right? Like I participated, but then I went over a little hump, and now I can't get my hand off my head, no matter how hard I try. So you'll use some of that stuff with hypnotherapy, but there's a lot of other stuff that doesn't necessarily require that sort of hypnosis. It just requires, how can I say this? Different ways of thinking, and getting used to thinking in different ways. Okay. For example, let's take a fear of spiders. So let's say I have someone on stage who's a great subject, and then afterwards I say, hey, anyone on stage, thank you for participating. If you ever want to have a hypnotherapy session with me, just let me know. And someone says, hey, I was on stage, I would like to have a session with you. I go, great. My tactics for this person to help them get over their fear might be a little different than someone who's not as suggestible when it comes to hypnosis.
Okay.
So with this person, I might be able to say, you were no longer scared of spiders. Like here's a spider. like imagine if they're capable of hallucinating, I might say in a second I'm going to open my hand, you're going to see a spider, all the details of it, and it's not going to affect you in the slightest. Like and now, I mean, this would be a rarer case, in that 5 to 15%, but something like that, as insane as it sounds, could work. Right? I mean, like, which is, again, like I say, every time I talk about this stuff, I feel like I'm pushing snake oil, but that could work. Another thing that could work, and that's very common with phobias, is to, like I said, change the way people are thinking, change their patterns about the fear. So spiders, for example, I don't know about you, I don't know how you process these fear of spiders, but I had a phobia of spiders as well. What would happen is every time I saw a small spider, it was like between seeing it and then the light passing through my eyeballs and then getting into my brain, at some point it exploded into this demon monster. I mean, it wasn't like an actual.
That sounds
image,
horrific. That's way worse than
yeah, right. Yeah, it was crippling. I mean, it wasn't an actual image, but that was sort of the response. It was like, oh my god, it's going to jump on me. And I've seen those spiders rearing in Australia. I know what they're capable of. Actually, it was the movie Arachnophobia.
Oh, you are preaching to the choir here.
Why would you release that? Why would you release that to the public?
Exactly. It's the scariest movie I've ever seen.
I mean, it was like Jaws. It had the same effect on. It was just like Jaws, in that it created these nationwide phobias.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what you can do is you could have someone first change, right? So in my case, I see the spider, it blows up into this demon. The problem is every time I see a spider, my brain only has one avenue, and that is demon monster.
It's the highway to demon monster. It's a straight line to your brain. Yeah, okay, I understand.
I have no other path. So what if I said to myself, or I said to you, like, again, I don't know how you're processing this, but let's say that's how you process it. I say, okay, what we're going to do is I want you to imagine a spider, but what I want you to do is imagine that it's now super small. Okay, and now I want you to imagine that spider, and it's a cartoon.
Okay.
And give it a smiley, give it a happy face, give it some little boots, make it colorful if you can. And even if you can't imagine
what color boots?
All right, any color you want.
Okay.
So, and even if you can't really, some people don't have very vivid imaginations, but they can still get a sense of things. So even if you just get a sense more than, this actual image, that's fine. Get a sense of that being a cartoon, get a sense of it being small, get a sense of it being happy, get a sense of it. Now, now perhaps get some music, some happy music, theme music, or the Looney Tunes theme playing in your head, and now see that spider. And now, so I mean, this would be a little more drawn out in an actual session. But what have I done? I've now created an alternative route, right? An alternate route from demon monster. Now I have another way. And if you get this set, do it a few times, that becomes the replacement response.
I totally get it. And I get the science behind it too. I remember watching a documentary a few years ago about the human brain and the way it works, in the sense that, and I forget the proper terminology, but negative people, their auto response to any given situation is negative, and that's because they've strengthened the pathways in their brain so that when something happens, that's the auto response. It's the message that gets to the brain first instead of another path. So I guess this is kind of the same thing, maybe not. But you've just given my brain another option to think about when I see a spider, when my brain before only had one choice and that was it, and that's why I always had the same response to it. Interesting.
And generally, so I wouldn't expect, I mean, well, I don't want to give an unhelpful suggestion, but I wouldn't expect that to make a huge, I would expect it to make a little bit of a difference, but you'd really want to sit down and run through this in a more comprehensive way, right? So like that I just went through, it's called the rewind technique, and it's got a whole bunch of other steps to it. A little more drawn out, giving it a little more time for those new images and ideas to, really take hold.
Uh-huh.
But then you would do things similar to that, right? So that's why I say you don't have to be a good hypnosis subject for that to work.
Sure.
If you are, maybe it's a little more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not, you can still think of these things and it will still have an effect on your emotional responses.
Okay, so that's for a tangible fear. I can see
Yeah.
a spider and
Right.
I have a fearful response to that image or to that geographical proximity, the physical proximity of
Yeah.
the spider will increase my anxiousness or make me feel even more fearful. But what about for something that I can't put my finger on? What if I have a fear of perhaps standing in front of since I do a podcast on YouTube, what if I have a fear of being in front of a camera? How do you tackle that? Is it kind of the same thing? Maybe that's not a good example because a camera is a physical object as well.
Well, but you're not scared of the camera itself. I mean, if
Oh,
you're
that's right.
scared
That's
of,
right. Yeah.
right, yeah, unless you are,
Hmm.
in which case, I might go.
There's
Well,
a
imagine
term for
it's,
that somewhere in some psych
imagine
book.
it's a cartoon,
Yeah,
and you
right.
can hear some
Yeah,
happy music.
yeah, right.
So, in the case of fear of public speaking,
yeah,
you would. It depends on the person, but generally, you'd want to break it down, right, and figure out what are the different components that are making up this fear, this anxiety, right? So it could be. Here are just a few. Could be you have too much pressure on yourself. You feel like you're an imposter and you don't belong there. All right, so that's one issue. It could be that you are worried that the audience is against you and all they want to do is see you fail.
Okay.
It could be that you expect absolute perfection. It could be that every time you just think of speaking in front of people for whatever reason, you get this rush of like cortisol, right? So you'd want to find out from the person what it is, and then kind of attack each of these individually. So, for example, if it is like, let's say it's a rush of cortisol, well, kind of similar to the spiders, you want to start to train a new emotional response. So you might want to get them really relaxed first, right? With some of the classic, 10 down to 1 relaxation induction kind of pattern, get them super relaxed. And now you'd say, okay, while you're relaxed, I want you to hold on to that. All right, I want you to think of yourself the last time you were in front of an audience, right? And even if some of that old anxiety creeps up, we'll just replace it with a new dose of this relaxation you're feeling now, right? And you might do things like that. And then, let's say it's you think that the audience is out to get you. You might not even need much for that. You might just need to reframe it a little bit. Like, you know what? The audience has their own things to think about. And in fact, they want you to do well. I mean, they have to watch you anyway. So, they're not sitting there rooting for your failure. I mean, maybe someone in the audience is, but who cares about them? They want you to do well. They are actually on your side and they're interested in what you have to say, right? It could be something like, I know I'm going on and on, but just one other thing. It could be you don't know what to do with your arms, right? Like a real source of this fear could be, I don't know what to do except for this.
Yeah.
Or,
I don't know where to put my hands. Right. Yeah.
So in that case, actually, so I do presentations for companies sometimes at like CES and other conventions around the world. So I've had to deal with that and help other people with this. So, I've come up with ways to loosen up your gestures. So it depends on what it is, but you just take a range of approaches and then start attacking them one by one. One other thing I will say really quick is it could be that you're haunted by memories of failure. Like maybe you've had bad experiences. Maybe you have had, maybe the audience has booed at you, or maybe you were in 4th grade and you just never got over that presentation that you had to give where, you thought that your crush laughed at you or whatever. So you can go back, and this is a common tactic too in hypnotherapy, is going back to memories, not like time traveling, but imagining them and kind of seeing them or getting a sense of them. And then, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself, but one of the techniques that you would do is you go, okay, imagine that you're going back in time, like you're flying, along this timeline and back to that memory that we've just discussed. And you can see it below you, you're going to sense of it below you. And, you can see that younger you being petrified or terrified or however they've explained it. And I want you to drop next to them. And I want you to tell them whatever it is they need to hear that makes the situation okay.
Okay.
Right. So in this way, I don't have to be the wise, bearer of wisdom. I leave it up to them. Like,
yeah, they're doing it themselves. Yeah, right.
Yeah. What do you think you needed to hear? Okay. Now tell them that, and take as much time as you need, and nod your head when that's finished, and that this has been changed forever, or something like that. Right. So it's great. I've handed them responsibility because I don't know what it is they need to hear. So they do that, and then you okay, hug them, float back up, realize that that's never going to affect you again, and kind of things like that, where you neutralize the intensity of the negativity of these memories.
Wow, fascinating stuff. And again, it's
simple.
It is simple, but again, that's going back to the point of like just suggesting a new path, a new but in this case, it's a new emotional path, right? Just a different road, a fork in the road. You can choose this one, or at least it's there. It's been presented now to your brain, so at least it's available for you to think about in the future. This is all really fascinating stuff.
Just about what you just said. So when that memory pops up, whether it's intentional or subconscious or not, now it's not an automatic cringe moment, right? It could be there's room there for maybe a lesson, or wow, that was me when I was younger, and I am significantly older and more intelligent and all that. So you can neutralize those feelings.
Where can we find you? Where can we find you on socials? Or I know you have a website. Tell us all that information.
So yeah, it's not quite. I'm a little bit of a slash careerist. So I have a website, GabrielDye.com, that is mostly geared towards helping people get over stage fright and give presentations. So I just wrote an ebook a little while ago about why and how you should give presentations at conventions like CES. And so I don't have anything that's really just hypnosis focused. I have a YouTube channel. If you just Google YouTube Gabriel Dye, you can see some of my hypnosis stuff. I just did a show for one of my niece's high schools. I did one of their grad nights.
How cute!
And yeah, in Boston, that was a blast. That was a blast.
So
I've got some clips on there.
You came full circle. You really came full circle.
Yeah, yeah. You can, and then Instagram. If you search Gabriel Dye on Instagram, you will find something completely different. My other job here, my day job is modeling for commercials and photo shoots and things like that.
Gotcha. Gabriel Dye on YouTube. That's Gabriel, Gabriel Dye, by the way, is Dye, not DIE. So don't make that mistake. Correct. If you're searching on YouTube, that might direct you to a whole different group of videos. Gabriel, absolutely fascinating topic. I feel like we've only just really scratched the surface on this because it is such a broad topic. And maybe again, we can come back, revisit it someday and go down a specific avenue. But this was so really interesting to me. It was really fascinating to learn all about it. And I do thank you for your time. Once again, Gabriel Dye on YouTube. There's the website as well. Look for his ebook. The ebook information is available on the website, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay, you can find him there. And then Instagram, if you want to book a model, you can find him on that as well. Gabriel Dye, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Really, really interesting. All right, thanks, Gabriel.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Well, like I said, when I started the interview with Gabriel, I didn't really know anything about the world of hypnotism. But now, after that delightful chat, I feel like I know so much more. Such a fascinating topic. And I once again thank Gabriel Dye for joining me for Storytime. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, hit subscribe, hit like, leave a comment below, and hit that notification bell as well. See you back here for the next one.